Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's choices for Morons Reviewing Movies. Today we are going to be talking about Shaun, the star of the show. His choices there is he's taking a big gulp there of straight vodka because he is the man. Guys, how are we all doing? How did we feel being in the aura of Shaun and his greatness for a week? Inside his head.
As fearless terrorist as I am every week.
So we bow down to Shaun and his mighty brain when it comes to this show. Shaun is a star, as we all know, so he's going to introduce the movies that were selected by himself. Surprisingly, he selected these ones at the length of time that they are. But Shaun, introduce them, please let people know what we were watching.
So the winners were American Gangster and There Will Be Blood. We've been trying to get There Will Be Blood on here for quite a while, so it was good to finally get it.
Yep.
American Gangsters, I've only seen it once, which was many years ago, so I just fancied sticking it in to see if it would win, and it would, and it did.
Happy days. And welcome, and thank you to those that finally voted for There Will Be Blood. It's been very well debated between us about the Instagram followers who never actually vote for it. We do judge you guys and we do talk about you behind your back. We have updated though, however, the names to be correct down the bottom, so the Instagram account you can see now says Morons Reviewing Movies and not just Morons Movies, as was pointed out to me weeks ago to fix, but I hadn't ever done that. And Twitter has also been selected and fixed because that also had the wrong name. But we do now have the star of the show running Twitter, so you'll see some amazing content coming from the big brains in the near future.
I keep forgetting about that.
So, guys, Daniel gives him a daily ask of how are you getting on with Twitter, Shaun? Shaun just playing on pies him.
I'm actually too embarrassed to answer. I went on the first night and I just followed a few pages. This is great. And then I've just not touched it since.
Yeah, and Daniel knows that fine well because he checks it before he even messages it.
He'll still ask, and he knows I'm too embarrassed to answer. He'll still ask.
The daily ask.
It's now going to be a running thing. I'll get asked
It won't be. No, well, just do it, and then it won't be a thing.
But listen, now all the people know that the star is running the Twitter, so I'd imagine it'll blow up very shortly and we'll be having a blue tick beside it in no time. But guys, we're going to talk about...
will be in your DMs in no time too.
Well, that's it. Get them monitored. I want Laurie to have access to the DM, Shaun. That'll be poaching. So, American Gangster is the one we're going to talk about first today. American Gangster came out in 2007 at a surprising runtime of 2 hours and 37 minutes. Shaun typically can only handle a movie that lasts about 80 to 90 minutes, so this was quite a surprise. IMDb scored it a 7.8 out of 10. So quite high regarded actually. And a little synopsis on it is: an outcast New York City cop is charged with bringing down Harlem drug lord Frank Lucas, whose real life inspired this partially biographical film. Can't get my words out there, guys. But Shaun, it is your week. You are a star. We will take it on to you.
That's embarrassing, honestly. You need to
I'm just referring you to... You're Shaun the Star. Shaun the Star.
No, that's people are going to think I've got an ego now, which is absolutely correct, but I don't
Shaun makes us call on this, guys. He's literally just trying to be a little bit humble. He made us all change our names on his phones and everything to this. It was pathetic.
Yeah. American Gangster. I remember it before I watched it. Actually kind of watched it today, but I remember liking it a lot more than what I did. Found the first half quite slow until he goes to the Ali fight with the jacket and stuff like that, and then it kind of picks up. Obviously, that's where they kind of where they kind of first notice him, the police, and then it kind of picks up a bit from there. I can't remember why I thought I liked this so much. I felt a bit kind of disappointed by the time I was done it, because it's too long for a start. I think it's too long.
Shock.
What are you laughing at? What are you laughing at, Bunzy?
Just the fact that Kel said before is that you can only take a film that lasts 90 minutes, and then you are saying, it was far too long. It is
too long.
It's the fact that you've picked...
About every film that's over 2 hours, I think I've said it's too long. But this one is too long.
He managed to
It's
fix it for 2.5 hours.
I will. I forgot it was so long when I picked it, but it's so fucking long, and so many parts to it, like where not a lot actually happens. Like I found it quite kind of confusing. Not confusing, but it's not very clear at the start. Obviously, you see Bumpy, the food and all that to the people at Harlem, and then he's when he's sitting in the wee cafe in Idris Elba, even a bit before that, where Idris Elba's asking to go get a lighter and stuff. So basically playing his character down as just this wee kind of joke guy that not to take seriously. He's not got any what's the word I'm looking for? He's not got any power in that underworld in New York or Harlem, whatever. And then all of a sudden, his brothers come, and obviously he goes to the jungle and stuff like that and strikes the deal. But then instantly he's sitting in the cafe and he just goes and shoots Idris Elba in the head in the middle of the street. And it goes for him striking the deal for getting all the heroin and the drugs and stuff like that, to literally, in my mind, like the next scene, he's sitting with his brothers and he just walks up in the middle of a busy street and just shoots somebody in the head, and then walks back and finishes his lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know that there's not much CCTV in the 60s and all that, but somebody would have phoned the police.
Well, it seemed as if, like,
Just stupid.
it seemed as if everyone at that point knew who he was, when the scene before it was as if he was just this random guy.
Aye, it just happened so quickly, and I know that obviously in real life it would have taken years for him to build up to be this guy and things like that, but it was literally in the film was just like instant. Like at one point, Idris Elba's character, I can't remember his name, was obviously asking him for the 20% or whatever, and he's kind of laughing off, he gave him $1. He then goes to get the drugs, he then comes back and shoots Idris Elba in the head and asks for his 20%. There was no, like, there was just nothing, it was just, that was the sequence, it was like those three scenes were like back to back, it felt like. It was just pretty slow for the first half. We went to the box and obviously they noticed him because of the jacket, and then it kind of sped up a bit for there. The tail end of the film was fine, but the first kind of, what felt like an hour and a half up to the Ali fight was very, very slow and drawn out, and I felt it was just like you either go the full way and you build them up properly, or you just start the film with him being this kingpin basically, and then just take it from there. I didn't like the way that they done it in the first half. I found it quite it just wasn't to my liking really. But to sum up, I can't really remember why I liked it so much in the first place. I felt a bit disappointed at the end there, if I'm honest.
See, just to jump on what you said, Shauns, I agree with pretty much everything you just said.
Whoa! That's not what we're all about, guys.
I know.
Disagree with him. Tell him it was a masterpiece.
Don't worry, we'll be arguing later on. Later on.
I'm verified of that. What I would say is, see what I wrote down based on that first hour and a half was, see if you took every single thing Russell Crowe did out of it, and just see if you just introduced him at the point of the Ali fight where he was first discovered, and then you're like, here's the cop that's chasing him. So we see Russell Crowe getting a divorce, Russell Crowe finding some money, Russell Crowe's partner dying, Russell Crowe's fucking losing his kid and his wife's moved to Vegas, Russell Crowe shagging his lawyer. None of that adds anything to the film.
Aye. Because I wrote that as well, Daniel. It's like, it didn't. If you were going to like explain a bit about them, I had to go much further into depth instead of just like a scene of showing those things you'd spoken about. Because actually, that's what I put. It was like it was pointless. Like it was either you need to like give a far more detailed insight into his life, or just cut that full thing out. Nobody cares.
How did you find the relationship with the lawyer, Bumsy?
I wrote down and said that that's his name. She didn't get pregnant, so that was alright. So you didn't have to figure out who
Vera Farmiga wasn't in this one, so he wasn't interested.
Love triangles for Bumsy. Too much love out on.
But even if they took out the whole starting bit about Russell Crowe's character, and even take, like, if they wanted to keep the same runtime, shows the aftermath where he becomes his lawyer and what that looks like in the court case, and how he becomes, because one of the bits of trivia I put down there is it ends up becoming like a godfather to Lucas's son and stuff. There's like, they're heavily involved together afterwards. So take that first chunk out and just put it to the other end. It'd be a lot more interesting.
But see, there was that idea. I thought they jumped through the end, and you never got the trial and all that sort of shit. So they could have filled in the time with that, or at the start, just like what Sean said, show us Denzel Washington building up his empire and like see it actually getting built up. Whereas you never even really got to. Did you know any of his brothers' names?
Nah.
Do we?
I can only point out one of them.
I think it was Chadwick Grossman playing one of them. That's all I gathered from his brothers.
Aye. I mean, do you mean, and none of them, it just seemed like a big waste. Whereas if you maybe had, take away 45 minutes of Russell Crowe's marital bullshit, and then add in a little bit of them doing shit, maybe getting to, or just at least see them building up the empire. Like you said, he goes to China, or wherever it is he goes, makes a deal, comes back, it must have skipped years. There's no way that.
Yeah.
Because he's got a mansion in that now.
Yeah.
He just comes back and he's got a mansion. I feel like they've missed out the bits that we would have been interested in and filled it in with just nonsense. Like it must have been.
So
I was going to say just quickly. You go.
Right, guys. Right, I'm
going to. See the scene where they give the money, like they found like £1 million or whatever, and they give it in and everybody hates them and all that. That's like 10 minutes of screen time and them debating where to hand this money in, and then other cops don't like them anymore. Like what's that got to add to anything?
But even if they're going to talk about that though, why is it not highlighted that they're the only two actual cops? In fact, there's only one because the other one was dodgy anyway. But the whole other precinct was raging because they weren't corrupt. Like, is that not a bigger internal issue that they need to deal with? I just wanted to pick up Hunter.
I don't touch it because towards the end, that aspect, that scene, that part of the story, it gains Russell Crowe's character some respect from Frank Lucas because he done that. And he's got that tinge of honesty about him. He knows he's got to serve him well, even though he's the cop at the time when he questions him before he becomes his lawyer. But they could have still added it in, but still skipped around it. They didn't need that 10 minutes sitting listening to the fucking radio in the car debating. We could have just seen them do it.
But how about they just...
and then they could have skipped over it, but still added it in.
But if they add it in, why not just take out the part where his ex-wife absolutely destroys his character because he's dodging every other aspect of life?
You just need to see it happen. You just need to know what happens, and that's it. You don't need to,
I was just going to say, Hunter, Chadwick Boseman's not in this one, mate. You're thinking of the guy from 12 Years a Slave.
That's apologies, my bad.
That's it. So, guys, please slag him off. Hunt him down for that. Wait. Bonzi, you had something to add in there as well.
Aye. It was just when you were talking about the police as well, is that when obviously they were complaining about handing the money in, they could have even like done it so that the policemen that were complaining about it, they could have either been, you say he was supposed to take them into the special force part, or when they were finding out about all these corrupt police officers towards the end, it could have linked back to that at the start or something. At least it would have gave some reasoning behind that scene and the $1 million or whatever it was that were handed back in. It was just a pointless scene at that point because it was never revisited apart from him getting asked by Denzel Washington then saying, I heard about how you did that, is that true? And another bit as well is like when you were saying about buying the house, is like he meets his wife at that evening they're out together at some kind of ball or something, and then a few scenes later they're married. There was it was like she added on to the film as well, didn't think, because it wasn't as if by having her, apart from her nearly getting shot, that was it. But you could have just had him in the taxi or him in the car getting shot, and also how his mum and his wife, neither of them really questioned at all what was going on with his life. They're just like, oh, you've got this big mansion, that's cool, I'm just loving it, and then I'll get everything I want. And then when his mum started saying, oh, I never questioned anything, and then she slaps him, she was never built as a character either. Again, there were so many characters in it that just didn't add anything to it. But everything else I've kind of thought was sort of mentioned already in terms of it just took about an hour for me to really get into it because there was just nothing for that first hour that really added anything, and the Russell Crowe character didn't do much either until it was into an hour and a half into the film.
Happy?
Did you notice Russell Crowe just dropping into his Australian accent every now and then?
Yes, I've noted that down, that accent. It's so bad.
It's funny because
Like
one of
Gangster,
the pieces of trivia I've got here is that Russell Crowe requested tape recordings of Richard Roberts speaking in order to match his voice mannerisms accurately.
Oh,
There must have been some of these scenes with like 100 takes out. Oh fuck it, I'm going home. I can't do it.
Back to Australia. Caden, thanks for following on your brand new Twitch account. Hope you're enjoying streaming.
well done.
Go. You've joined the 36 other people that are sitting in here currently watching us, Caden, so welcome in. One of the things I wanted to pick up was how many times did Denzel Washington just be Denzel Washington with my man.
Yeah.
Oh.
I just don't think he was very good at it.
Key points is similar to Flight. This is just the Denzel Washington show.
My issue is that Denzel Washington plays Denzel Washington. He doesn't play the character that he's supposed to. He's every film you watch him in, he's the same guy. Like Training Day, you could have put that could have been Frank Lucas for all I knew. To me, it feels like it's a very similar. He doesn't. We're obviously going to go on to talk about actors in the next movie that adapt to the roles better. But Denzel doesn't quite cut that for me personally. But it would have been an interesting choice because the alternative person that was picked, if Denzel Washington declined the role, was Will Smith.
It's weird enough. That was the first thing that popped in my head when I thought if you were to ask us this question. I thought it'd either be Will Smith or some generic rapper because anyone could have done that role because there was nothing special to it.
I'd have liked Will
Like,
Smith.
the script never added anything to it. It was Denzel Washington's being Denzel Washington that added some credence to the role and elevated him above the rest of the film, which was shite apart from him, essentially.
I mean, the thing is as well, whether these performances that good or not, like, obviously we don't know what the guy's actually like, it's based on a real life person, but I think Denzel Washington's just got this natural sort of charisma that carries him through a film anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could listen to Denzel Washington saying anything and being anybody, and it would he's got this sort of weird cool that you just can't quite put your finger on what it is about him.
You could put him in like some sort of. You could put him in a serious drama or some sort of straight to DVD action shoot up with Gerard Butler, and you would still think it was watchable because Denzel Washington was in it.
Aye, that's it. And he is very similar in most of his movies, to be fair.
Is that not how Samuel L. Jackson's career goes most of the time? You just any film in, just put his name on the title and folk will watch it.
Well, Samuel L. Jackson's different. He does about 5 films a year. Trust me, there's loads of his films you've never even heard of. Never mind that you watch.
I know, there's some actors that go that way. They'll just literally film anything that they can, regardless. It's all about quantity more than quantity. Just to chop on some trivia there, so obviously we're talking about people that could have played the other roles. Who would you have a hazard a guess at then? Who was the original choice to play Russell Crowe's character, Richard Roberts?
Is it a movie called Favourite?
No. It's not Keanu Reeves.
Oh,
So
that's
this
what
was, what, 2007 or 8 or something? This
Both of today's films are 2007.
It's a strong year. That's when No Country for Old Men came out as well.
Shite.
I would say. So who else was big at the time?
Joaquin Phoenix, possibly.
It's
Matt
good,
Damon.
but it's not right. Nope, wasn't Matt Damon either. Think more gangstery.
Ray Liotta.
Ray Liotta. Spot on.
Do you know what's weird? Like, see, once you say gangster, I can imagine Ray Liotta playing that guy.
Yeah.
Ray Liotta could have played
That's
the detective, the corrupt detective, Josh Brolin's character. He could have played that well.
Aye, that as well, actually.
But
But I think he'd have been good as the Russell Crowe character. Because I know Josh Brolin. I need to mention that, actually. Let's go back a bit.
Yeah.
Josh Brolin was also fucking class. Like, I thought he was.
He was.
Josh, he was probably my favourite character, and he's like as corrupt as he come, but literally taking it from every aspect, he was brilliant in it. Like you you could tell he was a nasty, evil person. He was only after certain stuff. When he shot the dog as well, I'm not even the biggest animal lover. Gutted. Pair of dogs, man.
Dogs, yeah.
But what I will say, I know we mentioned really a lot there, but this film was set initially in the first couple of years, but it kept skipping a couple of years, at the same time as the new Sopranos movie. The prequel to Sopranos is set during these riots in New Jersey, and they totally skimmed over that. And you would imagine that these characters are part of that, and they've totally skimmed over a big part of their storyline.
Aye, but I suppose it's the Italians are just kind of like a side show of this.
Well, I think it was like a black versus Italian riots in New Jersey and New York at that time.
But even during
what I mean is this was concentrating more on them versus the police rather than the internal sort of gang struggles, if you know what I mean.
If we're going back to the talking about, if you're going back to talking about like what could have been better during the start of it, because they touch on the fact that Denzel Washington's character's been connected with Italians throughout his whole life as part of this criminal upbringing, like, but that's not even alluded to that well other than one sentence. That'd have been a bit more interesting because it made it shocked. Like the detective, one of the other detectives was laughing when they mentioned that he was black rather than Italian, and that we're no bothered about him, we're just bothered about the Italians. Give us a bit more background over that would be more interesting than watching him pour his sugar though, which I've got as a little bit of trivia. That any time that Frank Lucas pours an excessive amount of sugar whilst in a restaurant is a sign/code to his bodyguards to keep a close eye on him because something was going to happen. We used that as
I don't think his coffee was off his sweet a couple of times.
That was a sign for everybody to be aware that something was going to happen.
Wow, that might add a 0.25 to my score. I like that.
Well, let's try and add some more points to your score to give you the trivia that I've got here. Rapper Jay-Z was invited to an original screening of the film. He was so impressed with it that he made his album called American Gangster. Despite being billed as the two top actors in the movie, Denzel and Russell Crowe don't actually meet face to face until 2 hours and 33 minutes in. They share. Yep, the closest that they get to sharing a scene was the Ali versus Fraser boxing match that someone pointed out earlier.
So see the thing about that. See, I've seen movies do that exact same concept very well, and this just isn't one of them. If that's what I didn't even notice that, but you can tell now that's something they were aiming for, to have it like come into this big collision, and then it just turns out you stand outside the church.
Aye, as safe as you could be.
What was that? Heat, when you had De Niro and Pacino on screen for the first time, and that was it. They had that sit down in the restaurant. Which was obviously built up, and they've tried to emulate that. Or let's make it happen an hour later into the story.
Mm-hmm.
I meant to say, Sean, before you came on earlier, before we started, I had two things written down that I thought you would say, and I would take a shot. But the first one was too long. I forgot to mention it at the time. I've got another one for the next one.
What,
so,
is it
too long?
Too long again?
No, too long isn't happening.
Right, Daniel, whilst you're getting your shot gone from there, so obviously this was in a highly competitive Oscar scene as well at that point, bottoms up. There was 2 nominees for this movie in the Oscars. There was Best Achievement in Art Direction and Best Performance by an Actress in a Supporting Role, who was Ruby Dee, that played the mother that Burnsy said had no relevance in the movie whatsoever.
What? No way! She's barely in the fucking film.
That's a pity vote.
I saw that when I was reading after it. I was like, if I missed something, thinking like she was as if she was far more involved. And she wasn't.
She must have died that year or something then.
Oh, she did slap her son, that was bad.
A posthumous nomination, that's how she got.
Well, I'm just going to
I don't get it at all.
I'm just going to double check that before we slander this woman's life. She died in 2014.
She's only got 8 lines in the whole film, and she's got an Oscar nomination.
Oh, well, she was nominated for it on this, so it must have been a slim pickings year for the supporting actress. The category in supporting actress had Tilda Swinton for and Michael Clayton, Kate Blanchett, and I'm Not There. I can never pronounce your last name, but is it Saoirse Ronan in Atonement and Amy Ryan in Gone Baby Gone?
Cersei or something like that.
Sorry.
So this is the same year that No Country for Old Men won the Oscars. So I'm assuming was American Gangster not nominated along with Good. I'm glad. It's a strong year.
No, it wasn't. We'll touch more on the Oscar stuff because there's a lot more relevance with No Country for Old Men on that as we move on. But does anybody want anything else want to add to this? We've ranted on about this one for 28 minutes.
I've got a couple of things.
Go for it, man.
The opening monologue, I don't think it was quite the opening monologue, but that scene where Denzel and Bumpy's character go into the store and he's ranting about like McDonald's is taking over your local takeaway and like this hardware store is now a chain super saver store. It's mental that that scene was apparently set in 1968 according to the timeline that appeared on screen. And here we are, 53 years later, and things like that. That's still quite an apt. Obviously, I don't think that's the exact words that were shared at the time. It's something that's been added in. Maybe I don't know if the director or screen or the script writer's chosen, but I thought that was quite apt. That even here we are in 2007, that was probably maybe a bit more prominent than it is now. But these things are still happening. Maybe the stores are changing. It's maybe like from McDonald's now or Starbucks or whatever. But here we are, all these years later, and things like that are still happening. And also, what I would have liked more in the film, again, similar to what's been touched on, the skip over the first hour. I would have liked to have seen more of the Russell Crowe, Denzel Washington relationship as they bring down the corruption. I would have liked to see a lot more of that. I think there's a lot more of a better story in that than there is in the story that they told on film.
It was literally less than 20 minutes you go to that. Yeah, 2 hours 40 odd minutes movie.
That's pretty much a Rocky 4 montage is all we got out of that come the end.
Because when you're watching it to begin, like when I was watching the first hour and a half, I was kind of like, oh, how long is this to go? And then when it actually ended, you're like, I wanted more from it at the end because they just completely skipped it.
If you were to pick a scene from it that was we'll go for your favourite scene in it. Have a little think while I tell you mine. So I thought the best part of it was when they were obviously doing the sting on the house where you've got all the lovely women in partial clothing that are fixing it all. But see when the cop's pretending to be a junkie as he's walking down, I thought that was class. Absolutely brilliant. That was probably my favourite bit out of the whole movie.
I think
he's probably been hired. That's his job in that special investigation unit, is to be that guy, just to walk into alleyways and find down dump heads.
Walk in and... So everybody else got any thoughts on what would be their favourite part about the movie?
On you go.
The exchange with Brolin and Denzel as he corners him on his wedding day, I like that.
That was clever.
They've got alluded to afterwards with the bombing of the car and the Thanksgiving. I enjoyed that build up in the exchange with those two scenes.
No, I like that actually.
I was going to say that for me, I like the whole when he talks to his brother and his brother's being like too fancy with his type of suit and all that, and he fucking gives him he basically says, if you were anybody else, I'd fucking shoot you. And then he makes that exact same mistake again, and you could see when he gets handed the Mike coat. I knew straight away I was like, he's getting fucked now. As soon as you saw him wear it, I was like, that's him fucked because he's gone against his own sort of laws.
Well, it's the fact he accessorised it with a big hat.
These things go hand in hand, do they know?
It's absolutely spot on as well, that the mink coat and that. Like, see if you Google the actual picture of Frank Lucas at the Ali fight, it is just literally spot on.
Classic.
The day, like, it's absolutely bad. So, fair play to the costume guy.
The costume guy, he should have got nominated over his mother, though, eh? Fire him in Best Supporting Actress instead. He's contributed more. Okay, guys, if there's nothing else to add on there, I think it's time we start to give our Moron marks for this. As I say, it was scored a 7.8 out of 10. With movies that were given out last week were The Conjuring and Insidious. They were a 2.3 and a 1.5, just as a reminder, guys. As we're going to pass going to the leaderboard today, because we go to the leaderboard every week with the same 3 movies. So we're going to skip that. We're going to come back to the selector of these. Sean, you give us your mark first of all, please, my friend.
I think the last half of the film did kind of save it a wee bit, so I'm just going to give it a 2.5 straight down the middle. But it is just too long. There's not enough of it, because an actual, from driver of drug kingpin, whatever, to top guy, quite an interesting, like, that could be quite an interesting story, but it's just far too much it's missed out. So 2.5.
2.5 from the star of the show. Anybody else want to go next? We'll go for Hunter.
I am going to echo the star. I'm also went for 2.5. Again, Denzel. Again, it's just being Denzel. He just delivers the same no matter what film he's in. But there was enough crumbs. I want to know more about his build-up. So there's enough crumbs in this film that I may or may not start watching Godfather Harlem, because I want to know some of the build-up if he's involved in that. Although it's not going to be Denzel, it's still going to be the same character. So because of that, I'm going to get a flat across the score 2.5.
2.5 coming in from Hunter. I'm going to mark it lower than you guys. This is a second viewing for me, and it's just definitely not got better. I'm going to give it a 2. Daniel?
This might be the first time you and I have ever heard the exact same score. So before I get to that, Instagram votes on this one for the scoring. The average across the Instagram votes were 3.83. There was a few 5s, but a couple of 2s in there as well. So I think that this one had quite a big divide. I think a lot of people, much like Shaun, they maybe watched this at the time when they were younger and thought it was good. And then,
there's a contrast between first and second gears in the scoring there, I presume.
Aye, I'd imagine so. But I'm also giving it a 2, just for all the reasons. I thought there was maybe half an hour's worth of good movie in this.
A 2, and then the Bengal TT, the mermaid of the show. You let us know what you were thinking.
I'm going to give it a 2.25, just echoing what everyone else said. The start was far too long, and then the end it was far too short.
2.25. So Burns, I'm not buying you any time here. Get the maths done really quickly. What are we scoring at?
Scoring at my score of 2.25.
A 2.25. So in terms of the leaderboard, obviously it does not fret the top. This movie then comes below The Conjuring. Listen, Billy Big Boss, I'll time you to this call right now.
He's getting too big for his boots now.
I know. Well, he never spoke for a couple of minutes and we went from 40 viewers down to 21, so I'm going to blame Sean for that. Start talking there. So it comes in below the horror movie that we watched last week, and above a really underrated movie called JFK. So this will come in about number 33 on the list for us, guys. So takes us nicely into the next movie, There Will Be Blood. Sean,
here we go, man.
We're going to start again with Sean. Sean, set the tone. First of all, before you do that, let me read out the synopsis of it. Give people a little bit of insight. Give you time to think.
There's actually a synopsis, is there?
So, a movie also out in 2007, 2 hours and 38 minutes long. Can you feel every one of them, Sean? Every one of the minutes. It is scored an 8.2 out of 10 on IMDb. Comes in at number 145 in the top list at IMDb. It is a story of a family, religion, hatred, oil and madness, focusing on the turn of a century prospector in the early days of the business. Go on, Sean.
This is probably the most disappointed that I've ever been with a film ever. Obviously, as the line we've obviously tried to get this on for quite a number of weeks, ever since it was actually released on Netflix, since Daniel pointed out many weeks ago. This, for me, is just a film that's been made to showcase two very good actors. But nothing happens. I don't know what the fuck the story is. I don't know what the fuck was happening when I'm watching it. I was bored. It was far too long. It's literally... I feel like it's just literally been made to show how good Daniel Day-Lewis is, as he is in everything, and how good Paul Dano is. But to me, there was just nothing else there. Like I was just sitting watching it, I'm thinking, like, I don't know if I've zoned out, but what the fuck's going on? Like, I just had no idea what was actually happening. It seemed to be at one point it was so focused on the wells and the oil, and the next minute you wouldn't get a mention of the oil for another 40 minutes or whatever. I just was absolutely just totally let down to the end of it, and I'll never ever watch it again. I've just found it just really boring, really mind-numbing. The opening scene, where it's just obviously he's digging and stuff like that, I thought like, this is going to be absolutely brilliant. I just really liked it. Like, the cinematography and stuff's absolutely brilliant. Obviously the two main actors are brilliant, but there's just nothing else there. I could go and look at pictures on Google if I wanted to go and see nice scenery. Like, it's just nothing there at all. It's just fucking, I have no idea what actually happened. I have no idea what the fucking story is. I just find it absolutely shite. And right. I'm raging. I'm absolutely raging.
Before we jump in to the next person to talk, just want to say hi, Dave. Dave says Daniel's looking fresh as a daisy. He'll not be looking fresh as a daisy as he have to take his second shot, as he's rightly predicted that Shaun said it would boring.
I knew that was what I got doing. I thought Shaun's going to say this is boring.
I obviously didn't want to, because like I really wanted to watch this, and I was really looking forward to watching it. And I watched this one first, but it's just like I'm hoping that you're going to tell me what actually happened, Daniel, because I haven't got a fucking clue. And I don't know if that's my fault, if that's my wee tiny brain, or if I must have fell asleep during this film. I must have, because I've just no idea.
Wait, someone from a host who took 4 naps watched it today.
Aye, no, I didn't actually fall asleep. I'm just saying I didn't I couldn't tell you what happened in this film. I just literally the final scene, like in the wee bowling hanging, he's killing him with the bowling pin and stuff like that.
Amazing.
Just I'll let you, obviously I think that Daniel and Hunter are going to.
Let me jump in first. I want to jump in first. Let's create the needle a little bit longer. You're absolutely spot on. This is quite a boring film, right? I think you've covered off quite a lot of it quite well there. Cinematography in it is great. The acting's sensational. I would go up there and say that I think Paul Dano's better than Daniel Day-Lewis in this. I think he's leaps and bounds better than Daniel Day-Lewis is. Daniel Day-Lewis just plays his character for Gangs of New York. That's the same character.
You don't understand this.
Daniel Day-Lewis is
He's got a moustache and he shouts and looks really angry.
I knew that. You were just saying because he's got a moustache, he must be the similar character.
No. What is it?
Nothing alike.
You missed it. I says he shouts and looks really angry is basically what he does in the other movie. But I'm going to switch up. Are we switching here? I enjoyed it. I liked it. It was a good movie. It's long. It is long.
You said it was boring.
You said you agreed with Shaun, then you liked it.
What are you talking about?
But
I agree with everything you said. It was really boring, but I'll tell you what, I actually fucking really liked it.
But I did like it because I actually felt like I sat and paid attention to what was going on, and it was good watching the big fish swallow up all these little things around him, and like if he wanted it, he was taking it, and there was nothing that was going to stop him. But I think it showcases how long a process it was. The only bit that I didn't like is how I felt like it really jumped quickly for his son being really young to really old, and I felt like that was a quick, and I didn't really, I thought that I missed something, so I rewound it and I was like, have I missed a bit where it says like fast forward 15 years, or it was just a quick transition? But I don't know, I liked it. I liked the whole interaction with his son. I thought he turns dead evil at the end because he's just a power hungry guy that isn't winning. His son wants to go do something himself, he's lost control, so he's lashing out, and the same reason where he didn't get everything that he wanted, so he spits the dummy out. When I say it was boring, obviously I put in the chat today, the first 14 minutes there's not a word spoken, and to me I was a bit like, I want to get into it, and I felt like I was drifting off at that point of paying attention, but I thought, I know I'm going to get slaughtered if I say I didn't like it, so I want to pay attention to see if there's anything redeemable. But it was really good. I think that I'm with you on the fact that I don't know if I'd watch it again in a hurry. I'm with you on the fact that it's long, because it is, obviously, it does feel long. I don't think it needs to be as long as it is. you could probably rip a good 45 minutes out of the movie. But no, I don't know what else I don't like about it, because, like I say, the two actors were brilliant. Paul Dano's brilliant in it. Like, his character's so out there. But I'll put him up there as, for me, he's better than Daniel Day-Lewis. Before we come to the two before we come to you two, I want to go to Burnsy first.
Yes, that's a good contrast.
I think I'm going to be in kind of in the middle of Sean, where Dunter there.
It's so funny because on my screen, used two are above me. It's this little duo that are going to jump on it the new. You're combined it to one person, they Dunter. Get that clip 43 minutes in.
So I think I agree with Paul Dano was awesome, and I thought Daniel Day-Lewis was okay, but I kind of thought his character, he just seemed to be angry all the time for no reason, or he was over the top all the time. The plot itself, I kind of knew going into it, I didn't think I was going to enjoy it as much as I did, because I thought, finding oil, who cares? You know what I mean? But I did find myself getting more invested in the film as it went on. I thought the ending was a bit ridiculous because it just jumped so far into the future, like Kelly said. When the film's that long to begin with, you could easily cut some of it. Like when there was those couple of people that I think it was one or two people that died because they'd fallen down and all that kind of stuff, and I was like, well, that was plenty of stuff in that in the film, because nobody cared that somebody had died.
But do you not see how cold he was about it though?
That's the point. He doesn't give a fuck.
He was so cold about it, like
yeah.
There was so many.
Though you're saying that, there's a similar theme in American Gangster where you see Denzel Washington with his fucking penthouse and his 5 houses and his beautiful wife. Then it cuts to some baby crying as the mom is next to him has died because she's overdosed. The baby's been sitting there crying for 2 days. It's the contrast between his power and wealth and the destruction that he leaves behind, but he doesn't give a fuck about because he's lying in his pocket with fucking dollars.
I agree. It was more the fact there was just so many other times where he didn't give a fuck about other things. You could have cut a lot of that stuff where he didn't have any emotion to anyone else other than himself. You didn't have to have so many parts and scenes where that was. But there was parts of the film that I enjoyed, but a lot of it I was kind of just. It was more a film where I thought I could appreciate other people enjoyed it a lot more than what I did, but it wasn't something I would rush back to watch again. And I thought the interactions he had with his son were quite good. But then it's like when he ships him off, because he ships him off when he's deaf. That was just random. After I'm sort of showing that much care to his.
See, I think that plays quite a bit. I think that's a really good part because it shows how ruthless he is and how selfish he is, and the fact that his son was an inconvenience to him because he had to give him extra care. It was like, well, do you know what? Get him to fuck.
What you have missed, right? What you have missed completely in this whole wee bit is it's not his son.
Obviously,
right? No, but I know, right? But he didn't take him to look after him. He took him.
They said at the end that he took him because it was a sub story to get pity to go on.
Aye, it's just that as part of his sales pitch, he was just a tool in the sales pitch. And once he was
childbirth and that,
do you remember the Liam Neeson story in Ballad of Buster Scruggs?
Yeah, it's similar.
That was it.
Yeah.
Basically,
please don't talk about Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Please don't.
I'm sure as well that he didn't keep his son to make the final deal to sell the oil, etc., did he?
No, because he was
still a sympathy vote at that point because he went deaf. He was still a sympathy vote as the legend of his son going deaf in the oil rig at the time was legend amongst the oil industry in that part of America at the time. So it was still, oh, how's your son? Right, that's the first thing the boy said. Or let us buy you for $1 million so you can look after your son. The legend of his son going deaf was widespread.
would it make more sense for the son to be kept with him at that point as well, instead of just like then that would to then like dump him after that point would have shown more of his ruthless side. I would have thought, be like I've got to now instead of cutting it half.
I think there's a bit of confusion between the scenes. So see at the scene where he's getting the offer of $1 million, whatever, his son's not there. He's already basically decided he's getting rid of his son. They're not there for the meeting. They're there to eat food or whatever it is they're there to do. He would never take them into that environment. He'd already been taken away for the sales part. At that point, he was going to get shipped off. He basically was trying to keep up the presentation that he gives. I mean, keep the order that he portrays to everybody, but he also wanted to get this wee boy to fuck. Do you mean? So he was between the balance of trying to show that he is the family man he's always saying he was, and this useless wee cunt needs to fuck off now. Do you mean? Because he doesn't care. And that, so I'll get more into it when it comes to me. So.
Well, I think we should.
The thing I had was just that the half brother that turned up, that was stupid. I didn't understand.
I thought that was good. To be honest. I
did like about that was how Daniel Day-Lewis's son tried to kill him because he was obviously getting jealous about the relationship, but at the same time...
No, I think he tried to kill both of them because it sort of touched on it at the end when it went back and showed a couple of scenes where Daniel Day-Lewis was the best dad to that boy. He was trying to kill both of them at that point, and I thought...
I thought it was only the half-brother, but I might be wrong, but I thought it was just him who was trying to kill him, and it was more that was interesting because of what happened later on in terms of reveals that, I'm not actually your half-brother, I'm just here because I knew who your half-brother was and I'm pretending to be him, basically, but I didn't really see what that added to the film either. They could have just not had him there at all, because...
So, what just to explain that bit as well, the fake brother has done to him what he did to that wee boy. He pretended to that wee boy that he was his dad so that he could gain from him. This other guy's come in and pretended that he's a brother of this guy to gain for Daniel.
It's just comment, eh?
Anyway, so he's got his revenge away.
No, it's not revenge. He didn't even kill him because he's realised that he's been sucked in. Do you mean it's his own failure? Like, do you know,
That's the half brother.
And then he screwed up the next morning and then go repent for the exact same sin that he's committed the night before by killing this guy and burying us.
Yeah.
Before we come on to Dunter, Sean, you got anything you want to add in as the star of the show here?
No, I mean, I don't know. I just honestly think it's so boring. Like, I really was looking forward to watching it, but I just felt so let down. It was so let down. I just couldn't get into it at all. It just really didn't kind of captivate me as much as it seems to have. Pretty much the rest of these. I think I'm going to be alone here with my mark when we go to scoring, but I'm really disappointed that I didn't like it. And it is just maybe because I've got a pea brain that I've just not got the capacity to actually understand what was actually going on. But as I said, it's really nice to look at, and the acting and stuff absolutely can't be faulted at all. But I just could not get into the storyline. It really broke me.
But leaving it in the thoughts of Sean would rather just look at Google Images to get the same amount of enjoyment. We'll pass it over to Dunter.
You could go to Street View.
who from Dunter would like to go first?
Street View on Loch Ness.
I've seen that. Absolutely wild.
Right, Dunter. Who's going first from Dunter?
That was a big surprise.
I'll go first.
Because
I have a question I want to raise with Daniel as my last point that no one else has touched on, and I think he'll get it. Right, first things first, Daniel's the worst. The fact that nobody else has mentioned it, I suggest that Daniel's maybe the only one that's tucked onto this possibility in the film. Right, Daniel Day-Lewis, first things first, 5-star performance, Oscar worthy. Like, he's one of those characters in a film that your feelings towards him change throughout the film. You feel for him at some times, you hate him at others, and even at the end, when as the film went on, I was hoping for his son would come back in years, and although he was going to help him financially by starting this new well in Mexico, I wanted him to kill him. That's how I wanted the film to end. I didn't want the film to end with Daniel Day-Lewis on top, but even when it did, I still wasn't disappointed because he's still executing this power that he has, that he is still the almighty that he believes and has shown he is through his ruthlessness throughout the film. He just played this act, got what he wanted, and developed and built up, and the fact that he was, I mean, I don't even fathom how big that house was come the end. The fact that he's got 8 butlers, or he's got a bowling alley. I don't know what it's got a bowling alley in his suits and steaks to wake up to because he keeps falling asleep lying on the floor. It's just unfathomable. But the only thing for me that I thought this film lacked, but then I don't
a
think
storyline according to Sean.
Because I wasn't wanting to feel sympathy towards Daniel's character in the film. You see the scene where him and his half-brother are lying on the beach and they're talking about the house. Obviously the brothers read the diary from his other half-brother, they talk about this house, and they're talking about, oh, if you could build a house, would it look like the house that you grew up in? And you can see Daniel Day-Lewis's character turn it up. Like, obviously something's happened to him in the past, which has made him the man he is now. But if you, part of me wants to know that story because you want to know how this guy ended up the way he is, but you also don't, because of how evil a man he is, you don't want to feel any sympathy towards him because that's the character he's portraying, and he delivers it so well. But I mean, it's one of those conflicts that I don't want to know it, I want to know what part of it, but delivering with what I've seen, I wouldn't want to know it because that's the intrigue. Do you want to feel sorry for him? Do you want to just hate him like you do as he builds all his way up through the film? And I'm actually surprised that no one's mentioned this yet. This was what we said before Craig and Sean came on screen. All I got when I seen the first scene and the scene where we get started to the boy, nobody's mentioned Ballad of Buster Scruggs yet, and that's all I thought when I seen. All I thought was the gold perspective during that first 14 minutes, and then the bit where he gets to his boy was upset the Liam Neeson character in Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Nobody mentioned it, so I don't need to take a shot this evening.
Well, we have tried to erase that from our memories.
Before Daniel goes into his wee thing, see the very, very opening scene where it's like a very kind of loud tone and you just see like the background. That I was expecting the boy on the horse to come out for Buster Scruggs in the opening scene of that. It's funny that you missed the perspective.
I'd just turned it off if that happened. Well, I'm not watching it.
I would have.
But the difference, what I noticed in that opening scene, although it's intense, it's like that first scene where he falls and injures, he's foraging for gold, and then the next scene where you see it, it's that wee cut scene where he's like designing a well. He's then going from gold to oil, which obviously they called the black gold, so I thought that was quite a good transition. But on my last point, Daniel, I want to raise this with you because no one else has mentioned it. Are Paul and Eli the same person?
No.
See, I expected this to be the first thing that anyone spoke about. Between these three, just based on other stuff we've watched, like twists and stuff like that, I genuinely thought people would really concentrate on that. But no, they're not the same person, I don't think.
So,
I genuinely think
just to jump in, I did think to start with when he came up and he's talking, because when he brings the food over to them when they're going to set up camp, there's a really awkward connection there, and Daniel Day-Lewis is looking at him like, I know you. Like, there was a bit of a confusion there, but then obviously Eli kicks off at his dad later on, and he brings up Paul, and it was Paul that did this, and there wasn't anything to suggest it was the same person at that point.
I thought, to me at that point, I thought, is Paul a split personality that family's had to deal with for so long? And in that final exchange, in the end where he kills him, is Daniel Day-Lewis basically saying, this is what you could have been if you weren't fathoming this false dream of being the false prophet, of making up this church that doesn't exist before you decide. After what I thought, that this is what you could have been if you followed up on that, the same boy who came to see me all these months ago and sold me this land for $10,000.
I just assumed that they were the same person. This is what I'm talking about, where my brain just doesn't have the capacity for this. But when obviously Paul Sunday comes and offers him, he says, I know where, give me X amount of money and I'll tell you where this land is. And then he goes and then he sits down for dinner and then he makes his offer. And I'm sitting there going, I was genuinely confused as fuck. I was going, what the fuck's going on here? They've literally just sat and had a conversation and he's just told them where to go. I didn't know what was going on. again, it's obviously just my 13-year-old brain that I've got.
Right.
I just assumed that they were the same person. I
assumed that you assumed that they were the same.
Well, I think this is a good time a good time to bring Daniel. He sat with a face like thunder throughout the whole time I spoke about this. So Daniel from
quite patient.
Daniel from Dunter, in you come.
Do you know what it is? Like, as soon as I watched it, I put in the group chat, like, I'm worried about this week. I just knew as soon as it finished that it's just not going to be for everybody, and I get that. But I'm going to use a word. I think this is a fucking masterpiece. Like, I think this is one of the greatest times to ever be put on film. I'm going to say something that might maybe seem a bit, I don't know, outrageous, but I think this is the greatest acting performance ever by the greatest actor ever. And I don't think there's an argument that Daniel Day-Lewis is the best actor ever. He's the only actor to ever win 3 Best Actor awards at the Oscars. Right? So through 100 and odd years of giving folk awards for acting, he's the only guy that's ever won 3. And he's only done about fucking 8 films. Do you know what I mean? He's winning Best Actor for nearly 50% of these movies. I just think he is mesmerising and unbelievable in this. Just to cover a few points that might have been sort of mentioned earlier on. I think, to me, right, I think Daniel Fairview, is the representation in human form of what the oil industry actually is, right? So this isn't just like a guy who's about greed and power, which it is, right? But it's the unrelenting nature of it and how it'll use. I mean, see now, today, we still rely 100% on oil. I mean, everyone who usually drives a car or fucking gets a train to work or whatever. So I mean, we still rely on this. And he knew early on that he could use that to his advantage in such a way that he's in control of everything. And I also think Paul Dano's character, Eli, not Paul. I think that Eli is equally as evil as Daniel in this.
The chops, because I would have to say that was the other thing I was going to touch on, was that his character only works in an American setting because they are so many aspects of American life are so involved in the church, and there's so many different variations of the same faith that they all. I think obviously maybe everyone's never seen Borat when he makes a jump of it, but there are so many people in American society that get that wrapped up in faith and believe that some guy who puts a collar on and touches their forehead and says a few words can heal them. And that still happens to this day.
Big cult.
That's it. And the thing is, Eli knows, right, that he's not healing anybody. Eli knows that he's not speaking to God, and you see it being revealed at the end. And I think I'll come back to them. And the fact that Eli knows all this, he's actually just trying to control everything the same way as Daniel is, right? It's just in different ways. I mean, one of it's by mass corporation, which you see now, people idolise wealth and greed and want to aspire to be wealthy and have everything, have absolutely fucking everything, right? Whereas there's still loads of people like Eli who want to control people by manipulation and by emotion. So one completely plays on all your emotions, the other one doesn't really understand emotions or have any emotions. Do you know what I mean? Everything's a useful tool or a tool that he wants to discard. Everything's just a step towards getting to where he's going to go. And he gets there anyway. And when you get to the end, that's where you see it coming full circle, is that Eli has been trying to manipulate the situation the exact same way as Daniel has the whole time, right? But at the end of the day, just like religion has been completely overtaken by industry and greed and money, he didn't have enough to challenge him. And the fact that he's like, I've been drinking your fucking milkshake. I mean, I've been sipping your well, and I've sucked it away from underneath you without even noticing. And see the reason he kills him, I think, it's because he's disappointed in him for not staying his enemy. I think he saw him almost as his equal, right? So there's a moment where Eli makes him get baptised, and he's making him repent for all his sins. Do you mean? And he's like, he's making him say all the things about his son and how he abandoned his son. And see the reason he doesn't want to say that it's not because he actually cares about abandoning his son. It's because he doesn't want to show that weakness. Do you mean any crack in what he's built? And that was Eli winning. And I think there was this sort of respect there. And see when it came to the end, Eli's begging him for the money, and he's like, he's revealed himself for what he is, which is just a fucking charlatan that was there to manipulate the same as him. He's like, fuck you, you mean nothing to me now, and gets it there. He's even got an equal. And I think, obviously at this point, Daniel's lost everybody. He's lost his son. He's not actually working in the oil fields anymore. He's had all of his success, and he's left with absolutely nothing. But he still had his enemy, and his enemy's let him down, and he wants to fucking kill him as well. But I think, I'm trying to see what else I've got there. I see you were talking as well about the cinematography and stuff like that, right? There's a thing that happens in this quite a lot, that the time I wrote it down was when he first sits down for the negotiation with the family, right? And Eli's sitting there, and he's talking just to the dad. And see when he's talking to the dad, the camera's like far out, right? And they're just talking away, chatting away. And then Eli jumps in and sort of interrupts someone and is like, what about our oil, right? And then it goes into Daniel Day-Lewis's face, and he's trying not to acknowledge him. And then suddenly when he takes Eli seriously, the camera just, boom, goes in. And now it's like so much closer to what's going on because the intensity's ramped up. And I feel like they did that in so many different scenes that even though what it looks like very little's happening, the camera's making you want to move forward towards the screen a bit like this and like sucking you in. But see, to everyone else's points, I do agree, right? I think this is one of those films that takes a lot of effort. This takes like lights off experience, paying fucking attention to like everything that's going on. And like one thing, my other big klaxon I was doing for you, Shaun, was I thought you were going to complain about the music. But the music's a huge part of this as well. It's so fucking overpowering at times that it really just conveys exactly what's going on. And in that first 20 minutes or whatever where there's no talking, there's thunder, there's music.
It does.
I actually like that. I did like that. That's something I do like. It's very striking, as I say. Like the very, very first opening scene is when it's showing the planes and stuff like that, and then it's this very, very, very loud, high-pitched kind of music.
And then you've got the time, like, at that time, it's the intensity. You've got somebody digging down this 12-foot divot trying to find a block of gold which is worth so much. And that's the intensity that these boys are going through a day-by-day, week-by-week basis. And there's no dialogue because 9 times out of 10 you're doing in that hole yourself, and that's what it's trying to add at that point. And it draws you in. At first I was like, oh, they talk, but like as it kept building up, I was like, oh shit, I need to put my phone down. This is getting, you could feel it building up as the scene dragged on, and that is just expert filmmaking as far as I'm concerned.
I made
the dialogue, and it still drags you in.
I made the comment to Sarah actually after this before we got going live, and I says, in terms of this movie here, I wish I'd watched it in the cinema rather than the house.
Aye. I believe that as well. I think it needs a certain atmosphere.
Yeah, and because my thought was that, like, in the house, lights on, distractions, but if I'm in the cinema for 2.5 hours watching this with full attention, I maybe would score it higher than what I'm planning on, because it would have been it would have helped the experience of it. I don't think it's the best movie to watch in the house.
I do think what you're saying is, and this is maybe a criticism of the film, is that I think it does take an effort, like, and maybe that's not what a lot of people want in watching a movie, but and I'm going to make a point before we get to the scores, right? Because I think there's been one movie ever we've unanimously agreed upon, right? And do you know why I think that compared to some of the other really high-end movies we've watched? Is that it forced you to fucking watch it, and that was Parasite, right?
Yeah.
So if you weren't paying attention to every single thing and every single scene, you didn't, because you had the subtitles, right?
Yeah.
And it was and when I was watching this, I just started thinking that I just imagined Kyle half fucking playing FIFA, or like.
I like how you said half working and then stopped yourself. Working. I'm a hard working guy.
Well, I've been started watching Netflix with subtitles on, so that definitely got me. Like, I would recommend that to.
I do that as well. I said I do, but.
No.
But the difference being, obviously, even if you've got subtitles in this, you don't have to look at it. Whereas we had to obviously look at it, and I felt like all 5 of us sort of picked up on everything and all the little nuances, and that was why we all sort of loved it. But I do understand why it'd be easy to be distracted away from this, because there are long scenes where what seems like very little is going on, I suppose. But just to round it up, I think this is fucking wonderful, like unbelievably good.
Let's jump into some trivia then before we add anything that we have got, guys. Obviously, this was jumping all over the Oscar scene as well at the point. There was winners for Daniel Day-Lewis by Best Performance by an Actor in a Leading Role. Daniel touched on earlier as well about the multiple wins that he has had. I did have a little look to see if there was any more people that had what was the multiples when it comes to it. So
let me guess. So I think Tom Hanks has got 2.
Tom Hanks does have 2.
Michael Caine's got 2, I think.
Michael Caine's got
not for leading.
2 for supporting. Michael Caine's got 2 for supporting.
Yeah. I think, has Jack Nicholson got 2?
Yes, so Jack Nicholson's got 2 for actor and 1 for supporting.
Cool. I think Daniel Day-Lewis is the only person with 3, isn't he, for Best Actor?
He's the only male with 3.
Oh, sorry, yeah. So has Meryl Streep got 3 as well?
So, no, Meryl Streep's not got 3. So Daniel Day-Lewis is only male.
Oh.
Frances McDormand has got 3.
I was trying to remember that Irish woman's name. She's got 3 things.
So she's got them for Fargo, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and Nomadland. And Catherine.
Yeah, by the way, Nomadland is a film that would be very similar to this. I fucking loved it, but you would all hate it.
And the person that's got the most is Catherine Hepburn's got 4.
But mixed between what, best?
No, 4 straight up Best Actress.
When was she, about the 50s or something?
So she's got them in 1933, 1967, 1968 and 1981.
Aye, that's not even the old film. I was going to say, that's like someone for like pre-World War II being classed as the best football player ever because they scored 600 goals in 9.
Messi got a golden boot in La Masia, then the other 3 in La Liga. It doesn't work.
Listen, we'll no rant about how Ronaldo's the best player in the world ever. But I did read another list here, Daniel, that I think is going to grate you right here as well. On IMDb, they have their top 100 greatest actors of all time, and they've classed this as the ultimate list. This was created on the 15th of November 2012. Daniel Day-Lewis comes in at 5th.
To be fair, he's won another Best Actor since then.
So he's came in at 5th, and above him is Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Marlon Brando, and number 1, Jack Nicholson.
So, I mean, they're all amazing. Although I think Marlon Brando is the most overrated actor of all time.
Interesting.
Like, Marlon Brando, apart from The Godfather, doesn't deserve to be in there.
He's got held up in this sort of mythic. He's a bit like, he's very charismatic in that. It doesn't do anything for me. But I mean, they're all amazing actors. It's just it comes to the personal preference when you get to like the upper echelon.
But then obviously, like, the majority of Marlon Brando's work is obviously before our time, and there'll be people on that panel that have maybe seen a lot of his earlier work that would maybe judge it. But everyone, the majority is swayed by The Godfather. Let's not beat about the bush, that's why he's up there. The Godfather's highly acclaimed. His role in that film is highly acclaimed. That's why he's up there.
And when it comes to...
I was just going to say quickly that, see, between any of them, you could obviously make an argument. I don't think there's a right and wrong answer. Like, I think when I made my statement earlier, it's like, just for me, man, like, Daniel Day-Lewis.
What you're talking, the difference is it's the quality and quantity. Like, Marlon Brando's films. They've all done like hundreds of films. Daniel Day-Lewis has done 8 or whatever it is, and he's basically almost delivering a 50% Oscar winning ratio in his films.
So just to crack on with some more of the Oscar stuff, it was also nominated for another 6 categories, which was Best Motion Picture of the Year. With that
what one, Kyle?
An absolute garbage movie called No Country for Old Men.
Best movie ever.
Best achievement in directing as well. Best writing for adapted screenplay, best achievement in film editing, best achievement in art and direction, and best achievement in sound editing as well. Trivia for this was quite difficult to find. I explained to the guys before we came on live that when you look through the trivia of this, it's massive long stories. So if you want to really read the trivia yourself, jump onto IMDb and have a look. Just a couple of snippets I want to pull out. Burnsy touched on body count about people that died in it. There was 4 in total that died. Daniel Day-Lewis improvised the speech that he gave the citizens of Little Boston. So about building schools, bringing bread to the town, etc. And the director Paul Thomas Anderson says of this that it was delicious. It was plain view on a platter. That's quite cool.
See when he sat down and he was like, "I am an oil man," and like gave them this spiel. Daniel Day-Lewis has just sat there and done that.
Yep, won it.
Fuck me, man. Like, fuck me.
Absolutely won it.
So then, I just can't okay, like, you see, like, even his surname, Plainview, just sounds like a generic pop-up American village where they find oil, and that's what they call it. I bet you there's like a Plainview in pretty much 40 plus of the 50 states. And again, that might add something to the character when this is built, when this film was filmed as well.
I thought I'd leave this bit of trivia to the end there because I think you guys will appreciate it. So it says Daniel Day-Lewis accepted the role of Daniel Plainview as he was a fan of Paul Thomas Anderson's previous film, Punch Drunk Love. According to the producer, though, Joanne Seller, the film would not be made if Daniel Day-Lewis declined.
This could never have been done without him. Can you imagine anyone else doing that?
Matt Damon, maybe.
Maybe.
Mark Wahlberg. I'm shocked Keanu Reeves wasn't in the running for it either. Okay, so if you guys want to move on to scoring, I think it's a good time for us to put on there. This has been brought up to such a high pedestal there that I'm going to come to Shaun first to get.
Do you want Instagram first?
I do. I keep forgetting about Instagram.
So this got a lot more people giving scores than American Gangster. But every single person gave it a 5, apart from one person who gave it a 4.5. So it averaged at a 4.94 on Instagram. I just want to give a shout out because somebody gave it this would be a 5.1 if it was in the Tokyo Dome, which I thought was fucking hilarious. Shaun's not a Bruce Pictures guy, so he'll not get that.
That is a very, very good reference. I like that. Shaun, let's lower the tone, mate. Go on, give us your score.
I feel really, really bad. I've just sat and listened to obviously what he's said, and Daniel's really excited, Hunter's really excited. I just feel really, really bad. But I need to be true to myself. I need to judge it how I seen it, and I just didn't like it. But if it wasn't for obviously the acting and just the cinematography that we kind of touched on and stuff like that, it would be a lot lower. So I'm going to give it just a 2.5 out of 5 because it's nice to. You can appreciate obviously great acting and stuff like that in the way that it's shot, like, but I just couldn't take to like the storyline and stuff like that. So I'll give it a 2.5, which I think is fair.
Hunter, you're next on my list.
I think your no country for old men gimmick has been removed.
Just before we.
It's still better than Never Be Blood.
Just before we move on, I just want to clarify that Shaun scored this the same as what Wreck-It Ralph is currently sitting on our list.
Can I? Sorry, 2.25 for the
He's now
and again, we still need to watch
Wreck-It Ralph Breaks the Internet though.
We need to watch Breaks the Internet.
Shaun,
when I started watching that, it was crying.
2.25 puts it below Knives Out.
No, I'm 2.5, so I'm sticking with obviously.
Okay.
No changes allowed, remember.
No.
Hunter?
Right, for me, I'm going for a 4.75, and similar to what Daniel touched on earlier, you see if you chuck me in a cinema, this gets a 5 for me, I think. I want wrapped up in that immersive experience that this film deserves, but there's so much going on that I enjoyed, so it's a 4.75 for me.
4.75 for Hunter. I'm going to come in and I'm going to give it a score of 3.75. Just mark down because others on the list that we've seen I'd much prefer to watch again and enjoyed more. But I did like it. It was good. Daniel?
So far, how many movies have we done so far? Like 50 odd? 60 odd?
We have currently sitting on 51 marked movies on this.
So I gave No Country for Old Men a 5, I gave Parasite a 5, and I'm giving There Will Be Blood a 5.
A 5 from Daniel. No faults there whatsoever. Burnsy.
Perfect.
I'm going to bring it down a wee bit. So it was better than American Gangster by a fair bit, even though I've kind of just said I didn't really enjoy it that much. But I could appreciate all the acting, and I think Hunt and Daniel kind of explained bits to me that I didn't really get as well. So I'm going to give it a 3.
A 3 from Burnsy. So,
The
Burnsy!
way you build that up to it, like, I'm thinking, oh, he's going to give it a better score, like, he's going to give it more.
I was expecting at least a 4 for Bunsy there. Like.
It's up to 2.5, so you pushed it up by 0.5.
You sucked me right in there, man. I was fucking sold by
No
that.
touch from men though, so.
Aye, that's okay.
Burnsy, what is our overall scoring for this movie then?
That's a 3.8 overall.
A 3.8. So, guys,
Tell us real lies, Kyle.
yeah,
Tell us what is better than
This deserves to be up there with 7 and Shawshank, like in the top. In the
Aye.
most, it does.
it's funny because
That's aye.
Shawshank's in the top 3 and I slept through the whole thing.
Aye, but you've seen it 5 times.
It's like the 18th time you watched it though.
So, a 3.8 puts this below, sorry, it puts it above, just above Short Term 12. Just. And it puts it below The Trial of the Chicago 7.
What else is it below me?
It's also below, so Trial of Chicago 7 is 9th on our list. So the movies that we have scored as being better than There Will Be Blood is Inglourious Bastards, The Fighter, No Country for Old Men, Fight Club, Wolf of Wall Street, Shawshank 7 and Parasite.
Yeah,
There was
it's a good top 10.
The Fighter's in there because Christian Bale carried that film, and Christian Bale is essentially just a diet of Daniel Day-Lewis. How is this not above The Fighter?
Are you sure?
And the thing is, no, but Sean didn't even like the fighter either.
It's because Mark Wahlberg's not in this.
Maybe.
And to be fair,
I-
Paul Dano's better than them all.
This is, do you know what I was quite surprised at? 2 things. Well, Paul Dano did they win Best Supporting Actor for this?
Was even nominated.
Oh, aye.
Holy fuck!
So best supporting, to give you the categories, it was quite interesting. So it was Tom Wilkinson from Michael Clayton, Hal Holbrook from Into the Wild, Philip Seymour Hoffman in Charlie Wilson's War, Casey Affleck in a very good movie, The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, and the winner was Javier Bardem for
that's fair.
No Country for Old Men.
Javier Bardem's the great. This is still my favourite ever year for movies. 2007.
But you see the thing, like, for me, I feel like they've downgraded Javier Bardem from main actor to supporting actor to give him that Oscar because he was, to me, the main antagonist in No Country for Old Men.
See, I would say there's not a main actor in No Country for Old Men. I don't think there is a lead. I think that's kind of how they've done it. There's no lead actor. But yeah, no, I mean, I suppose Javier Bardem, if he was in for the lead actor, would never have beat Daniel Day-Lewis.
No, that's what I mean. It's like you can't not give they two an award.
And Paul Dano is
Two
better than
best
both of
things
them.
I've ever seen, man.
Paul Dano better than both of them as well. So guys, that brings us to the end of Shaun the Stars week. Before we jump on to obviously our next 2 stages where we talk about next week and we do the wheel spin, just to recap on there, American Gangster scored a 2.25 and There Will Be Blood scored a 3.8, which I think this one's going to grate a little bit on on Dunter for quite some time. This is going to be hard to overcome.
I thought I would scrape a 4. Like, I really thought I would scrape a 4, and then I wouldn't be embarrassed when, like, I've got to go on Instagram sometimes and, like, post the top 10 and stuff, and, like, what we've scored it, and, like, oh, man.
You have to interact with all the viewers that are going to be questioning you. Why?
Alright, so I've got these 16 folks that have given it a 5. Unanimous 5 look to us support the part 1 4.5, and we're going to stick it at 3.8.
Well, you can have fun with that when it comes to Instagram, but let's jump in and talk about next week's movies. So next week's movies, we had a little bit of a change to what it was. It was originally pulled out of the wheel at 80s action movie, but Daniel will let us know how difficult that was finding 16 movies from the 80s action.
I think you guys got a little taste of it when I started asking for help after the full day. But I'm trying to find... just for anyone who's not on the Instagram, every week we do 16 movies based on the category on the wheel. So finding 16 80s action movies that were available on Netflix, Disney, and Amazon Prime that were passable was a nightmare. So we changed it to pre-2000s, so that could be 70s, 80s, 90s, just old action movies essentially. And I think we managed to get a very strong 16 from that. I think if we'd either gone 90s or 80s, we would have really struggled. So thankfully, you let me change that.
Yeah, and we also added in an extra part. We've signed up for a week's trial anyway of the MGM section of Amazon Prime. So one of the movies that you'll see just now, I'm just going to put it on screen right this second. So the movies on screen that you can see that won the votes were The Fugitive and The Terminator. The Fugitive, Daniel, can you remind me, where was that available to watch?
Amazon, I think.
Amazon for that one. And the
Yeah.
Terminator is definitely on the MGM section of Amazon. You do get a week's free trial if you do want to watch it alongside with us. I must say I'm very excited about watching these two movies. Very, very excited. Has anybody here not seen either of these films?
I've never seen The Fugitive.
I've not seen The
I
Fugitive.
don't think I've watched them this decade, but I've definitely seen both. Sorry, this millennium. But I've
Have
definitely
you seen The Terminator, Bonzo?
Yeah, but that long ago
Wow.
that I wouldn't be able to remember.
Aye, I'm the same. I've seen it once when I was like really young. I can't really remember it.
Just looking at the picture of Arnold there, what a specimen of a man he is.
I remember having like the full Terminator trilogy on VHS. Where remember back in the day, used to get labels for your VHS, and they're like wee sticky letters, and they used to put them on.
Guys, just for a
I
bit of
like the
clarity,
film.
Hunter's about 15 years older than all of us, so... Right, guys,
That Terminator trilogy on. Somebody used to rent a video for a video shop and then copy it, and then sell it for like before copy DVDs were. I used to get it with videos too.
we're just going to jump into the wheel spin so we can get there. We added a couple of categories into this week. Dan, you wanted comic book movies added in?
Yeah, not necessarily Marvel or DC, but just based on comic books. Because I've noticed there's quite a lot of like indie comic stuff that's on Netflix now. So quite nice to watch maybe Sweet Tooth or something like that.
And at the request of one of our followers, Sarah, who obsesses over Tarzan, she wanted a sexy hunks category being added in. So we will watch movies with some extremely handsome men in them. So let's get the wheel spin up on the screen so that you can all see it in action. And here it goes. You can hear it buzzing round. It's passed over Daniel's name. It's passed over Naughty's comedy. And it's landed on one that I think Sean is going to love. No, it's not horror again. It's animated.
Fucking hell.
Yeah!
Actually, that works for me because that's my day off.
You're getting the day off. You're not.
Sean can get better planned and still go for his walk at lunchtime.
I'll be on holiday. See you later.
So wait now, just clarify, is that your actual day off, aye?
Aye, that's when I'm away at that cabin.
Well,
So
I'll get
just
reviewed. I'll be away.
just while we're here then, I think we need to pick, so again for anyone that's not seen, we put out on Instagram for guest reviewers for occasions like this when maybe someone's not going to be here or just to add someone else in every now and then. So maybe this is an opportunity for us to get someone for Instagram to be replace Sean for a week.
that sounds
Aye,
absolutely
if we could put
fantastic.
someone on here that's not on Instagram and they'll see it, that wants to put their name in the hat for it.
So
Yeah, feel free to contact the Instagram there. And as per
Ask them if
normally,
they watch the film.
when Sean takes his leave of absence, as he does quite regularly on this show that we do, he will still watch the movies and he will ad hoc in his information to me, and I will relate to you guys on the stream. Because of course, whilst he's away, he's still going to be watching us.
When you were off one week, Sean, and you gave No Country for Old Men 5 stars, it was one of the happiest days of my life.
Considering when we watched the first time round, you gave it like 3.5 or something like that.
I don't think that there's going to be a mark low enough. I don't even know what these films are going to be, but I'm going fucking hate this.
No, they're not anime. Sorry, just to clarify, Sean, they're not anime, just animated.
Well, it could be like a Simpsons movie or something like that.
That's absolutely fine. I just was here. I thought it was going to be.
No Japanese necessarily, but it might be an anime that wins it.
That's all down to the Instagram followers, Sean, and you need to be trying to stack the deck a little bit then on your own social platform.
I literally thought it was just anime, which is totally no one can tell.
I hope anime wins now. But guys, that concludes this week's 1 hour and a half. We're nearly treated you to of the introduction of Dunter. We've got a new love child set up in here. We have had American Gangster absolutely demolished by everybody on here. And There Will Be Blood with a real mixed review on there, and a new movie breaking into the top 10, which I suppose is fairly exciting from how amazing our streams are. Terminator and The Fugitive next week, and then we will also have it up on the social media platforms, both Instagram and Twitter. I believe Twitter's going to be really in action this week.
I think the vote now has to be a combination between Twitter and Instagram, I think.
Talking about the votes for animated movies, guys. Just before we finish up the stream, I'm going to send you across to a brand new streamer, my boy Caden. Give him a follow and say hi when you pop into his stream. We're just going to host his channel just now. So we will see you next Monday. Bye.
Yeah.